Let's talk about Keir Starmer. There was a party last week for the great and the good from the Labour ranks. It was at Lord Wahid Ali's flashy Covent Garden penthouse apartment. Everybody who was anybody in the Labour ranks was there. You'll remember this is the apartment where Keir Starmer stayed during the election, allegedly so that his son could revise in peace away from the huge throng of journalists that Keir Starmer said stood outside his house in Kentish Town 24/7. Which wasn't true, but that's what he said. This is so that he's well known to this place. So Wahid Ali, who of course we remember gave Keir Starmer 20 grand's worth of fashionable glasses and expensive suits. I mean, you wouldn't know it, but apparently they are expensive. Gave his wife, Lady Victoria Spunger, Starmer, 5 grand worth of dresses. Gave Angela Rayner dresses, gave Rachel Reeves outfits, and so he was the benefactor, the millionaire giving money and gifts to all these Labour politicians. Now there's a party on Tuesday night, last Tuesday night. Great and the good all there. Ostensibly it was to raise money for Labour. Labour are in a blind panic after Reform UK got a single donation last week of £9 million, or it was revealed that they've got that. So Labour are in this sort of panic-stricken fundraising mode. So that ostensibly it was to bring Labour politicians, businessmen and people with money together to see if they could raise some cash. But in fact, apparently what it turned into was just loads of people huddling in corners plotting against Keir, and apparently when Angela Rayner turned up, West Streeting's already there, they kind of embraced almost rather OTT theatrically warmly, and everyone was going, well, that's Keir screwed then. So this crescendo of talk that Keir, it's not a question now of if he will go, it's when he will go. That is reaching fever pitch now. And, you know, as you and I have discussed before, personally, I think it will be after the local elections when Labour will get a shellacking. But a lot of people say it must be before that. But the knives are out.
Yeah, what great value this party sounds.
Wish I was there.
Wouldn't that have been cool? Yes, so I mean, I can see a scenario in which, you know, leadership elections take quite a while for any party, really, and I can see a scenario in which the sort of starting gun is fired on a Labour Party leadership election before that set of local elections, which, as you say, are likely to be a disaster for the party. If I were ambitious for that role, you know, if I were Angela Rayner, if I were Wes Streeting, I wouldn't really want to have to own the local election results. So I would want to be installed safely after that crisis. Yep. And so I could say, well, you know, that's all in the past now. I'm turning things around, and the next set of local elections, if we don't cancel them, will be a lot better. So I would have said my bet would be on the timing that the new leader won't come in until after those May polls.
But at Labour Towers, the talk is all about how long Keir can last. As I say, it seems to be the word coming out of the Labour gossip mill, the rumour mill, it's no longer a case of if Keir Starmer will go, it's when he will go. Yeah. And when he goes, I assume, well, I mean, I'm certain when he goes, he will take Rachel Reeves with him, because she's part and parcel of the Starmer package. And interestingly, people like to talk about Health Secretary Wes Streeting as the front runner to take over from Starmer as leader of the Labour Party and therefore Prime Minister. But I'm hearing from the Labour gossip mill that they don't think it will be Wes, because he is too inextricably linked to the Starmer bandwagon, that he is seen to be like Keir Starmer, sort of rather too centrist. Don't forget that this is what's so terrifying. the reason that the Labour people will get rid of Keir Starmer, I mean, horrifyingly, is because as far as they're concerned, he's not left-wing enough. He's not giving enough money to benefit claimants to the welfare bill, etc., etc. It's terrifying. Careful what you wish for. I mean, I want him to go, but whoever gets the job after him, it could be Angela. I mean, it might be Wes. It might be Ed Miliband. It could be even worse.
Oh, absolutely, it could be even worse. And if you just carry on creating more and more welfare dependents, then you probably carry on creating or shoring up more and more Labour votes. So I think things can get a lot worse. I've always felt that at the very least Angela Rayner would be a bit more entertaining and colourful. I mean, it's sort of, as a journalist, it's hard to imagine anything much worse than Keir Starmer as a Prime Minister. He's just so unbelievably, life-sappingly, crashingly dull. And that's
yeah, at least Angela, yeah, you're right. At least Angela's funny. At least Angela's funny. I mean, she'll be, in my view, worse, more left-wing, even less competent. She'll be an ongoing car crash. Same for Ed Miliband, but at least they'll both be amusing. Angela Rayner will be very funny. Can you imagine a double ticket? And it's quite possible, folks, because these are the two most popular cabinet ministers, or in Angela's case, former cabinet ministers. The two most popular Labour luminaries among Labour Party members by a mile, by a country mile. The most popular is Ed Miliband, and then behind him is Angela Rayner. If those two get the ticket, I mean, as journalists, we'll have a field day, but I fear for the country.
I think I would really fear for the country economically. I mean, it's hard to imagine things being a lot worse, but they would get worse, I'm sure, without a doubt. And you know, Rachel Reeves, of course, she's going to have to go when Starmer goes. He hasn't got rid of her because he knows if she goes, he goes. So the two of them are completely tied together. But you can't imagine that a Rayner Miliband leadership would lead to anything other than more radical, more big state, you know, radical left-wing policies, because they're truly rattled about the crazy rise of the nut job Greens on the left, which, you know, Labour is being squeezed now by the Greens on the left, and the you know, many of their truly working alarm clock Britain voters or erstwhile voters are now drawn well away from Labour because they don't think that it's the party for working people.
Yeah, he gave an interview to The Observer yesterday, old Starmer, in which he said, well, you know, Zach Palensi, the Green Party, all their policies are just nuts. They're nuts. He's absolutely right. Rarely, Starmer is absolutely right there. But what he doesn't seem to realise is great swathes of his Labour supporters love this stuff. They love Polanski. They love green nutty policies. That's his problem. You know, once again, the groundswell of opposition to Keir Starmer among the Labour ranks is not because he's too left-wing, it's because he's not left-wing enough. And that is terrifying. He lives in Wales and he coaches his daughter's kids' football team. Well, not anymore, because he's been banned from doing that, because he posted on social media around about the time of the Southport riots that he was less than happy with our ongoing migrant invasion. He revealed he had right-of-centre opinions when it comes to asylum seekers and the migrant crisis. Perfectly legal. Don't know what's wrong with that. He was, as a result, arrested, of course, went to court, charged with inciting racial hatred. A jury. This went to jury. You know, these are expensive, these cases. The jury took 17 minutes to acquit him. He's an innocent man because the charges against him were ridiculous. He remains, however, banned from working with children where he lives. He's not allowed to coach his daughter's school football or a kids' football team. Unbelievable. Well, Isabel, I'll get your comments on that in just a second, but this is Jamie talking earlier to Ian Collins about his ordeal.
And for us to just expect illegal immigrants to come here and not go through any kind of checks. They want me to go through DBS checks and all sorts of other checks just to coach children, and yet we're expected to just let illegal immigrants come in here without any checks and then spread them amongst our communities, and we're not meant to say anything about that. And yet I'm pulled up for trying to get security in place for schools and parks, trying to look after our children, and now
you're the bad guy, because you've now been barred from coaching at your daughter's football
I'm trying
team.
to look after kids. Now I'm taken away from coaching kids, and I was sent to jail for actually trying to look out for the kids. It's really just all backwards.
So, Isabel, that's his story. Posted something about migrants, saying too many of them, they're causing problems for the country, straight after the Southport riots. Was arrested, went to Crown Court, trial by jury. Jury took 17 minutes to acquit him of inciting racial hatred. He's an innocent man. He's still not allowed to coach his daughter's kids' soccer team. And Toby Young has taken up his case, and he's revealed he's got 12 similar egregious cases where people have been ruled to be inappropriate to be around children, that they are not the right kind of people who should be near children, helping children, teaching children, coaching them football, for this reason. Their political outlook is right of centre. So right-wingers can't get anywhere near kids. What the hell is that all about?
This is so sick, isn't it? You
Yes.
know, that the machinery of the state should trouble itself pursuing and frankly persecuting people with opinions on illegal immigrants, rather than the illegal immigrants themselves, who have already by definition broken the law, and some of whom pose a real and present danger to the children, a demonstrable danger. It is absolutely topsy-turvy and just a tragedy for our country. You know, it's hard enough getting people to volunteer for these types of roles, you know, looking after, doing the kids' football coaching after school or and at the weekends, because of the, you know, the hoops that you have to jump through. And many, probably most people say quite rightly, there have been horrible scandals in the bad old days of inappropriate people working with children. So great, you know, it's good that people go through a proper routine of vetting. But how could somebody be ostracized like this from work that they do and love because they were falsely accused of something? And it's really important also to point out that this unfortunate individual benefited from a trial by jury. And in an unusual case, he clearly did not plead guilty. Now, an awful lot of people who were caught up in that absolute horror of persecution of people for social media opinions post-Southport were very badly advised, in my opinion, to plead guilty. They were told that if they pled guilty, they'd be processed quickly and it would all go away. And the absolute opposite happened. And those that said that they were not guilty may have fared better, as in the case of this chap, although unfortunately he's paid a very heavy price nonetheless.
Yeah, I said exactly that to my wife earlier today. I said under David Lammy's no jury system, poor Jamie Michael would be behind bars right now. He really would. So that's why we have juries. That jury obviously treated this case with utter contempt, just to get out of here. Of course, he's not guilty. Now, in his post, his alleged offending post, he did refer to some migrants as scumbags. This apparently was his great offence. Well, look, it's true, because you could take any section of society, any group of people, they're going to be scumbags there. So the
people are scumbags.
Yeah, the contention that some people out of a subset of some people are scumbags cannot be controversial. It's certain to be true. There are always scumbags in every group of people, aren't there?
Absolutely. you know, what he was perhaps implying is that there's a disproportionate number of scumbags amongst illegal immigrants, and that would not be an unreasonable thing to say either, because they clearly, for a start, haven't respected our borders or our law.
Yeah, and so it is this safeguard. There's a safeguarding council now, and it's quite a safeguarding board. And so anyone who works with children officially, football teams, Boy Scouts, Brownies, Girl Guides, all that has to be vetted. And I do think, sadly, that is appropriate. But it looks to me as if the safeguarding boards, certainly in the case of Jamie Michael, have decided anyone who's right-wing or has right-wing views or is not perhaps particularly well disposed towards migrants and asylum seekers, well, they can't work with children. I don't know where they get that idea from, but safeguarding boards need to be told the politics of the people looking after children are irrelevant.
Except that too often the opposite politics of people looking after children are on full display in our classrooms.
As we were discussing earlier with Christmas.
I mean, you can't have it. You can't have it all ways, can you? You know, what is the politics of one group's okay, but the politics of another isn't. You know, we're not talking, you know, fascism here. We're talking people who have conservative views on all manner of issues. It shouldn't be any part of whether you're suitable to look after children.
This is part of the frightening nature of our new left-wing establishment. The government's looking to hand out £1 billion contract to one of these contractors to run a sort of souped-up, supersonic new deportation centre at Heathrow Airport. They've got one already. It's where the failed asylum seekers, they're rare, I know, but some people do fail. No, seriously, I mean, don't forget, although our system is rubbish, something like 48% of our asylum seekers do kind of fail. So they have to go into this holding tank before they are actually deported back to their countries. There's a huge one at Gatwick, big one at Heathrow. That's going to get souped up, and they're looking for a £1 billion contract to run this place from 2028 till 2038. So presumably it's going to take 3 years to build it, to improve the facilities that are already there. But I'm thinking two things. The incredible cost, and probably worse than that, the inherent revelation that this government has no plans, doesn't see in any way a solution to this migrant crisis. All they can see for the next 13 years at least is it getting worse and worse and worse, and they'll need a much bigger deportation centre, a much more extensive deportation centre at Heathrow Airport than they've already got, right up until 2038. So as I say, 13 years, that is unlucky for some. The lack of ambition in that announcement inherently is depressing, isn't it?
I think there's a couple of things here. The first thing to say is that the Channel migrant crisis could be stopped tomorrow if there was the political will to do so. It really isn't that complicated. As complicated and as agonisingly tricky as they try to make it sound with all their endless harping on about international treaties, the reality is they could stop the boats tomorrow if they wanted to. So that's number one. You know, I would hope that a future government that will come in a lot sooner than that 13 years will show them how it's done. But the second thing is that the scale of what's planned here really is an insight into this, as you say, this not only the scale of the problem as it exists now, but the kind of the way this government thinks that it's going to evolve over the years. And I fear that that price tag will only be a fraction of what's involved. If there's a new facility actually being constructed, we can bet our bottom dollar that it will cost a multiple of the initial projections as they scheme in, you know, endless sort of solar paneling and bat tunnels and God knows what else.
Ed Miliband will deserve that. It will insist that it's fully net zero compliant.
Exactly. But I suppose on an encouraging front, a future government that is really serious about mass deportation could make pretty good use of this facility. So, that's the upside here. A future government would not have to spend 13 years carrying out the removals. If this facility is up and running, processing from this facility could be handled an awful lot more quickly. And God willing, perhaps in short order, the facility itself will no longer be needed.
Yeah, that's an optimistic way of looking at it. The pessimistic way of looking at it, which is my way of looking at it, is they just think that more and more migrants will be coming here and more migrants will have to be sent to this deportation centre. It is purely a contingency plan for an increasing migrant crisis, not a decreasing one. As I say, that's depressing. But let's hope you're right. I just fear you won't be. Let's talk about the other migrant story I wanted to... I mean, every day we've got this shambles that we can report on. This one caught my eye. From August 20... So when migrants come here, legal migrants, and I guess a few illegal ones as well, but these are mainly legal migrants, the ones we're still letting in to the tune of about 750,000 every year. They come here to work for the NHS, care homes, etc., and many of them are students as well. Well, they do have to take an English test. It's called... the International English Language Testing System. It's mandatory and they've got a pass to be able to stay. It's run by the British Council. Turns out that from August 2023 to September 2025, so 2 years, over 2 years, up to 80,000 people sitting this test run by the British Council were given the wrong results, meaning that many of them were given passes even though they had failed. What's worrying about that is many of them go into the NHS. So when you go to A&E, as I had the misfortune to do a couple of months back, and you get a nurse, and I'm not, I couldn't understand a word she says, or you get one of these doctors. I mean, I'm not criticising them. They're from a foreign country. If I went to their country, I couldn't speak their language. So I'm not looking down on them for this, but they can't speak proper English. It could be because they took this damn test and were told they passed when they didn't. Also, Isabel, to add grist to this rancid mill, there is serious evidence of cheating on this exam continuing to this day, particularly in China, Bangladesh and Vietnam, where criminals sell leaked test papers to migrants so they know all the answers in advance. So this system, where we do try to make sure these immigrants coming in legally can speak English, is just crap, basically.
Well, who would have guessed it? Who would have guessed it, Kev? I mean, we all know this from our own experience. I've tried to have conversations with all sorts of migrants roaming around in different settings, and rarely do I find that they can speak brilliant English. And I'm just thinking of trying to talk to some of the not particularly new arrivals, frankly, in the constituency of Boston and Skegness, where there is a heavy presence of Albanians and Bulgarians. I mean, many of them, I'm serious here because I spent quite a lot of time trying to have conversations with these people. Many of them, I'm afraid to say, can barely say what country they come from overseas. And I'm going to be a bit punchier than you, Kev, on that issue of language barriers within healthcare settings. You were generous in saying, well, if you went to another country, you wouldn't be able to speak the language. Yes, but you're not applying and accepting a job providing life-saving healthcare in those settings. If healthcare providers cannot speak the language of the patient in the country that patient is from, that can be a truly life-threatening situation. So I don't think that's okay, not even slightly. I think it is.
I stand corrected. You're right. It is important.
I think it's unusual for doctors not to be able to speak English, but it isn't, I'm afraid, that unusual amongst some of the healthcare assistants. They're not paid well. They're not recruited for their English language skills, but the reality is they have to provide sometimes quite important services. So it is a real issue. And
I think it just strikes me, Isabel. This is, when you look at this, we can't even get these tests right. It's just another one of these examples where you just say, the useless UK can't get anything right. We seem to screw everything up. We never seem to get anything right. We didn't used to be like this as a country. We used to be a bastion of bureaucratic efficiency compared with some nations. Now we're a basket case.
I think it's the scale of everything. It is the size of the problem that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a handful of English language tests here. We're dealing with these tests on a mass scale, and where you've got anything on a mass scale, there is the scope for screw-ups and cheating and all the rest of it. And I'm sure that this spills over into other settings. Perish the thought of what's going on with driving tests, for example. Because it is absolutely well evidenced that in certain other countries, people use substitutes to sit their tests, all sorts of tests, right from school exams upwards.
Yeah.
So is that happening? I don't know. I'm speculating here. But I think that the scale of what we're dealing with this mass uncontrolled immigration, where systems have not been set up to cater for that, is having all sorts of ramifications and repercussions that we don't immediately think of. We talk a lot about the impact on housing, for example, but I think we all know it's so much wider than that.
So we followed, with sympathy and horror, the plight of poor Thomas Markle, Meghan Markle's father, now currently living in the Philippines with his older son, Thomas Markle Jr. The guy's been through since, for the last 7 years or so, a heart attack, 2 strokes. Used to live in Mexico, has moved to the Philippines, went through an earthquake not so long ago, but survived that okay. Now he's had emergency surgery, this was emerged last week, for a blood clot, which has necessitated, very sadly, the amputation of his leg. Doctors, Thomas Markle Jr. explaining, look, this is touch and go. They've told me my dad might not survive. So we're all going, surely Meghan's going to reach out. Surely Meghan's going to bury the hatchet after 7 years of not talking to her dad. Surely she's going to do it now. So we hear over the weekend, oh yes, her people, her publicity people, yes, she sent an email. This was amazing to me. She sent an email, and when it didn't get bounced back, she assumed he'd got it. Not sure about that. Now we're hearing today, reports now saying she's been trying to call. She's been calling around Philippines hospitals trying to find her father. Well, look, I've got Thomas Markle Jr.'s phone number. I could find out what hospital he's in probably 5 minutes. Now, Meghan Markle phoning around, is this where my dad is? Is this where my dad is? Are you buying that story?
It's my understanding that Doria continued to communicate with Meghan's father long after their falling out. Where is Doria? Why is Doria unable to assist? You can't just pick up the phone and call the Daily Mail, who's literally in the same room with Thomas Markle, talking to him and recording him for the Daily Mail. It's my understanding that the Sussex team has them on speed dial. Otherwise, how did we get such crisp and clean images of Meredith Maines, Meghan and Harry's PR girl, meeting with the King's communications guru, Tobin Andre, back in July? How did we get such clear images of the Sussex team meeting the King's team in the Daily Mail back in July? Meghan has access to reporters at the Daily Mail. We know that because whenever there are hints that Harry and Meghan are coming back for royal duty, as if, we know that that's coming from Team Sussex. And this is also, Kev, don't forget, the same woman who Serena Williams calls so smart in Harper's Bazaar, and the same woman that sat on the stage at Fortune's Most Powerful Women. If you're so powerful, it shouldn't take you a damn week to figure out where your father's located.
Well, I'm not saying that Thomas Markle Jr.'s phone number is that easy to get hold of, but it is obtainable, and
Right.
if Meghan Markle wanted to speak to her dad. She could get hold of Thomas Markle Jr.
Well, and her lawyers are regularly in touch with Samantha Markle, her half-sister.
Exactly. She could get that number. This idea, the latest image we've been sold of Meghan Markle desperately phoning around hospitals in Philippines to try to find the one that her dad's in, it doesn't stack up. She could get that number. She could get from Tom. She could get from Tom Jr. how to get in touch with her dad. Tom Jr., I'm sure, will go to the hospital, give him his phone. Maybe Thomas Markle Sr. has got a phone as well. She could get that number. I'm just not. I don't believe this story that she's. There's. The Duchess of Sussex desperately in Montecito going, "Hi, do you have my dad there? Hello, do you have my dad there?" It really is hard to believe, isn't it?
It's the worst crisis PR scenario that her team could ever imagine. Her trying to shill this familyless Christmas show on Netflix, and her dad, her actual family member, lonely, scared in a hospital in a foreign country, losing limbs. It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. So yeah, they're going to, in my opinion, lie about Meghan Markle's state and Meghan Markle's actions. Because Wednesday, Meghan Markle's show drops on Netflix, her joyless, familyless holiday special. And we find out that Thomas Markle Sr. has been rushed to the hospital. He has a medical emergency. Harry finds out. He still sits down with Colbert and jokes around with Colbert. Meghan finds out. She's still sharing Colbert posts on Instagram. And her team has the audacity to say, we're actually trying to find out if these are credible reports. They want to embarrass the family by accusing them, in my opinion, of lying about this medical emergency. Meghan says she's not sure if it's true or not. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? If this is true, please give my father some space. I imagine that this is a very traumatic time for him, which she has not done since 2016, 2018. She's not protected this family. She throws questions around its validity and tries to hint that maybe her family's just doing this for attention. And then on Friday, we're now 3 days post initial hospital visit. Catherine and her family and her entire family are rolling up to Westminster Abbey, showing that holiday spirit, unity, love, a strong family value set. And there's Meghan releasing to People magazine that she vaguely reached out to her father, a woman that spends half an hour writing, "You're so brave, you're so strong," in love notes to her children and her husband on a holiday special, wants us to believe that she thought an email was the appropriate measure when her father was in a life or death situation. And then her team, someone from her team or somebody tells the Daily Mail that she uses an old email that Thomas hasn't used in at least 5 years.
Come on.
I mean, it's all this. Every time you and I have a conversation about Meghan Markle, it's this person said this, that person said that. There is never a clear, copacetic message. Harry and Meghan are dishonest, in my opinion. They lie. They lie to look better. Throwback to the Kardashian Picturegate, saga. The Markles, and I'm talking about Meghan, I'm not talking about Thomas Sr. The Markles are messy. And this is exactly why Prince William cornered his brother and said, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure that this is the appropriate route? Are you sure that this is the right woman? Because Meghan is messy.
Yeah, this is the scenario. This is the way I see it. You, me, lots of royal watchers over the years have said, "Come on, Meghan, your dad's just had a heart attack. Come on, Meghan, your dad's just had another stroke. Get in touch." She never does. Just keeps the drawbridge up. makes this special, the holiday special of With Love, Meghan. Such an important time for family and friends. Yeah, what about your family? What about your dad you haven't spoken to for 7 years just because he posed for some pictures for the paparazzi? What about your brother, half-brother, Thomas Markle Jr.? What about your half-sister, Samantha Markle, who you also haven't spoken to? So never mind your family claptrap. But here's the deal. So we've said this all the time. Come on, Meghan, show her heart. She never does. But this time, even she realised, oh my God, the optics of me not getting in touch now that my dad clearly is at death's door.
And I'm clearly trying to sell a Christmas show about family.
Well, well, exactly. She realised now I've got to do something. And what she means by do something, this is my speculative scenario. What she means by doing something is she puts out a message saying, oh yeah, I've sent an email. It didn't bounce back, therefore I assumed he got it. Well, most of us are then going, hang on, your dad's just had a leg amputated. He's at death's door.
Your brother says he's high on medication.
But he's fighting for his life. You send him
and under a bunch of machines. When you have all those machines attached to your body, is your first instinct really to check your email?
Yeah, well, exactly. And also, an email isn't enough. We're going, pick up the damn phone. Call your dad. And by magic, what happens over the weekend? Yes! Meghan has been trying to call. She's been ringing round hospitals trying to find her father. That bit of the story, just as I said earlier, it just doesn't stack up. If she wanted to talk to her dad, she could, and she should let us know, and she should get him to confirm it to his friends at the Daily Mail. I agree.
Yeah, I just think that this is all a crisis PR solution, and it's the worst possible because, like you said, we will have receipts. And I think that that's one of the reasons why she's gone off in all of these different directions, because I kept saying when people were messaging me after the initial very vague statement, she's reached out to her father.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant, did you?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
All of everybody loved that headline. I saw it regurgitated a million times, and people were reaching out to me, and I said, I'll wait for Thomas Markle Jr. to confirm it. He'll show us phone records. He'll have the receipts. And so then I think she realized that too, and she started having to change whatever version of the story it is today. Oh no, it was in an email. Oh no, I'm calling a bunch of hospitals.
Yeah. What is it you need? What is it you need from me that will make the story, which will make me look nice? That's what this is all about. You're right. This has just been a PR operation, and her worst nightmare is this: that Thomas Markle is sitting down with Caroline Graham from the Mail on Sunday, who I used to know quite well when we were over in LA. Very good journalist, obviously, and she's in there with Thomas Markle, and whatever Meghan Markle tries to say, as she tried at the weekend, I've been in touch, I've reached out. So immediately Caroline asks Thomas Markle, have you heard from your daughter? No. Has she called? No. Have you had an email? No. In other words, whatever story Meghan tries to concoct, Thomas Markle Sr. is lying there in a hospital bed in the Philippines, able to say whether or not it's true. So her next story, desperate. I've been trying to find him, making lots and lots of phone calls to Philippines hospitals. That again gets her off the hook in terms of why potentially she hasn't spoken to him. Do you see what I mean? She's making...
there's a very specific tone. Have you noticed the new very specific tones today? Desperate. Meghan desperately trying to get a hold of her father. Since when, y'all? It's almost been a decade, okay? Yeah. We've had a heart attack. I think we've had multiple heart attacks or strokes. There was a point in time where he could not speak and had to write everything on a chalkboard or a dry erase board. You know, this is all just Meghan trying to desperately salvage what's left of her piss-poor reputation.
I mean, this is it. I mean, again, to go back to this, just before Christmas, when she's launching her lovely, happy, snappy Christmas special on Netflix. This to use that phrase again, this is her absolute worst nightmare. This is a PR catastrophe. And frankly, the only way she can actually claw this really a catastrophic situation back is to talk to her dad. I don't think she wants to, but I think
she does not. She has no desire to. Go back and watch the Netflix series where Harry and Meghan talk about the loss of their fathers. And Meghan talks about her father as if he's passed away, that he's gone. He's no longer on this earth and accessible to her. Yeah. That's not the case. And you can sit there and joke around and FaceTime with James Corden on his late night show, Harry and Meghan, but Meghan can't FaceTime her children with their grandfather so he can see what they look like for the first time.
No, exactly. So she needs to talk to him, but I got a feeling she doesn't really want to. But every time she pretends, she's not in a position where she construct what she would call her truth. That's what she wants to do. She wants to build her own truth around this situation. But every time she tries that, Thomas Markle's sitting there in that hospital bed to say, no, I haven't heard from her. No, she hasn't called me. So she either calls him, or I think the world are going to go, what kind of a woman are you?
You know, if you don't want to communicate with your dad, I'm not going to say that's okay. I think it's pretty cruel. But the least you could do is connect him with some amazing doctors, or say, how can I help financially? Because it's my understanding that the insurance is challenging. Thomas's bills currently at the Philippines hospital. How can you help him? Can you get him in touch with an expert here in the States that can give him some sort of comfort and let him know that what's going on in the Philippines is the right direction that he's headed in for his health? I don't think he's had the second surgery about the blood clot in his thigh, regarding the blood clot in his thigh. There is still concern for his future. I mean, talking about the earthquakes, he lives high up in an apartment complex in the Philippines. That's a new way of life he's going to have to adjust to. And Thomas Markle Jr., that's a lot of physical work that's going to go to Thomas Markle Jr. supporting his father. Does he need a full-time nurse around? Does he need to move out of his current apartment and find one on a lower floor, you know, to make his life easier? There are a lot of questions up in the air. Meghan, you don't have to have a one-on-one conversation with your father, although it would be the decent thing to do. But is there a way, while you continue to tell us how to elevate things, is there a way that you could make his life a little easier going forward, considering the fact that he opened up so many doors for you and gave you the life that you have today?
Yeah, well, listen, this is what I would suggest to Meghan. I would hope she would do this on a personal, emotional level. But
good luck.
Considering she tends to calculate her publicity broadsides, even if she wants to do it for PR reasons, this is what she should do. You let me know what you think the chances of her doing that. This is what she should do, without a shadow of a doubt, if she wants to retrieve her shattered, devastated public image right now. And that is this: get on a damned aeroplane, fly out, and see your dad, possibly before it's too late. That's what she should do. What do you think the chances of her doing that are, Kinsey?
Oh, she's got to put the 8 mugs out the night before for the holiday party. She's already working on her mom's gumbo for Christmas Eve. No, Thomas Markle interrupting Meghan's holiday magic this year? Absolutely not. She is one of Harry and Meghan are two of the most selfish, self-serving people I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, I know I say this all the time, but it's been 2 years now since the King and the Princess of Wales. It's almost been 2 years since they told us that they have cancer. Catherine, thank God, is in remission. Have you seen Harry and Meghan show up to one cancer charity to support, you know, to subtly support the King and Princess of Wales?
No, I
mean, they are so self-consumed. I don't think they care. We find out Thomas is in the hospital. Harry's cracking jokes at a luncheon on Thursday about Downton Abbey and is on Colbert Wednesday night when the news breaks. These people are callous and cruel.
They certainly come across like that. Let me ask you, moving on to Harry, what do you think about this? I mean, I nearly yawned when I saw this story. The Home Office here in Britain, the equivalent of your Home Security Department, have agreed to yet again review the security arrangements of Prince Harry and potentially his family when they come to Britain. So he continues, having failed twice in the courts, to get a ruling that he gets automatic gun guard protection from our cops when he comes here. He's failed twice, spent a lot of money on that. Obviously, critics saying, well, you don't deserve it, you're not a working royal. Why should we spend our taxpayers' money protecting you? Yet again today, the Home Office have agreed to review this. This is because he's like a little kid who hasn't got his way, keeps stamping his feet, and as we understand it, it's being sold to the authorities that if you just give Harry the automatic gun guard protection that he wants, then he can bring his grandchildren over to see the king. That's what it's being sold as. But let me tell you, Kinsey, we, the British taxpayers, we don't want to spend a penny on that guy who is shirking his duties. Why should we pay for his protection when he doesn't work as a frontline royal? He's over there.
But he's trying. But Kev, he has very intentionally tried to look like one the last few times he's been out.
Yeah, but he's not, though, is he? So we do not.
I think that that's a huge conflict because he is trying to. He wants to. He wants to look like one, but then he goes on Colbert and trashes Trump, which you're not supposed to do as a royal. Yeah. So I think that there are so many conflicts here.
Yeah, but the people of Britain do not want to pay a penny for that guy's protection. What are your thoughts? I mean, we here in Britain, it's like, oh my God, not again. Can we please put this issue to bed? Unless that guy, old Ginger Nuts, comes back here and starts performing frontline royal duties like the rest of his family,
which no one wants.
He does not get automatic gun guard protection. End of. End of. Please, can we just drop this issue?
Yeah, I think that the current setup is really convenient. Harry currently just has to contact the Met Police 30 days before arriving in the UK, and they do a security review on a case-by-case basis. And that seems to have worked out really well so far. Harry has remained safe in the United Kingdom whenever he visits. He's only been able to present them, I believe, with one instance where he felt like he had a stalker after the Well Child Awards. I don't believe it was this year, but perhaps it was last year. But I cannot, off the top of my head, present you with any evidence that there have been any other incidents where Harry's felt like his life was in jeopardy. In fact, we have Ring door cam footage of him aimlessly wandering through a neighborhood looking for a friend that moved that didn't kill him. Like,
going to the wrong address.
Obviously he feels safe enough to wander around a neighborhood he's not familiar with looking for old friends. I'd also stress that I understand the argument that Harry was born a prince and this is his reality, but Harry also does things to jeopardize his own safety. And if I were a UK taxpayer, that's where I would step in and say, you don't behave like somebody that is fearful for their lives. Otherwise, you wouldn't be bragging about all of your kills in Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly right. And also, Kinsey, he's like a Hollywood celebrity now coming back. We don't pay for Tom Cruise's protection when he comes in, nor would he expect it. Harry has to understand he's not technically a proper member of the royal family anymore. It's as simple as that.
He also does something else that I think is very important to point out. The biggest form of violence we have in the States right now is political violence. Look at what's happened in the last 6 months in my country. I have a president, not in the last 6 months, but there were multiple assassination attempts on the president of the United States.
Charlie Kirk, of course,
And for Harry to get on TV and to try to stir the pot when it comes to politics in such a tense political climate, if I'm somebody reevaluating his security situation, I advise him to shut the hell up and stop that right now. You know, aside from the fact that as a royal, and when he left the royal family, he promised Queen Elizabeth that he would behave in a certain manner that I believe he's violated over and over. I do think he jeopardizes his own safety by trying to insert himself in American politics. We fought a war. People died. So we wouldn't have to hear from royals about the future of the United States of America. And I think he really needs to be sat down and counseled on that, because if I were a UK taxpayer, I'd say absolutely not. This guy does this to himself. Totally
right, Kinsey. Well said. Just before you go, Meghan Markle loves picking up awards. She's got a new award that you sent me. It's from the store Kitson, I remember it well, down on Robertson Boulevard. Tell me what award Kitsons have decided that Meghan Markle warrants. What does she want? I'm
gonna have to look up the exact title.
Well, yeah, I've got it here. Villain of the Year. Villain of the Year.
That's right. She's featured on a display on the outside of Kitson, you know, one of the most popular pop culture places in the city to go for grabbing gifts. You run into Paris Hilton there. You run into all of the celebrities there. Yeah. And she's on the storefront with Gavin Newsom, with Mayor Karen Bass.
George Clooney. Katy Perry. These are all villains of the year.
Yeah, characters that have really let down the city of Los Angeles and really let down all of us over the last year. And they were so irate. They contacted me after the Palisades fire, and Kitson was where they live and some of their employees live. And they were so angry that Meghan was trying to use that as a PR opportunity for herself and to platform herself, those fires, that I am not surprised by this at all. This is also not the first time Harry and Meghan, but this time Meghan solo appeared on Kitson's, wall of shame.
Yeah, and they've got it. They've mocked up in the window of this store on Robertson. The Duchess has got a hat on, and it says Montecito Diva, and they're basically calling her the Queen of Holiday Hypocrisy. This is their Holiday Hypocrisy window display, and bearing in mind the plight of her poor old dad, Thomas Markle, and that happy, snappy smile she puts on, the Richter's grin throughout her holiday special, with love, Meghan, I would say Holiday Hypocrisy is about the size of it. Rebecca, I know that you watched it. I don't usually inflict pain upon myself by watching Question Time, but because it was from Dover, for two reasons last week, I decided to tune in. One, I thought it might be interesting because Dover's on the front line of the migrant crisis. Two, the local MP, Mike Tapp, the Labour MP, was on it, and he's hilarious. The most hilariously stupid person in Westminster, so I thought he'd be funny. And three, I used to live in Dover when I was a kid, for a few years, so I was interested. And in the venue, when I was a little boy, I used to play five-a-side there, but my wonder at that sort of personal nostalgia soon dissolved as I watched with a mounting sense of horror the proceedings. First of all, Fiona Bruce at the outset announced that they put into the audience these small boat migrants, people who you could describe as illegal migrants. Okay, they've probably got legal status now, but they arrived on small boats illegally, and now they're on Question Time, giving their stories. And one of them, so she chose two of these small boat migrants to speak, and one of them was from Afghanistan. And I was watching him and I was thinking, he kept going like this, like that. And I thought, he's reading something. And he was putting the case why Britain should stay in the European Convention on Human Rights. His heart and soul didn't seem to be in it. It was as if he'd been given a script that he didn't quite understand. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, has got skin in the game because Zia Yousaf, the former party chairman, was on the panel. He too was shocked at what was going on. But here's this migrant, this Afghani migrant who arrived here as an illegal on a small boat. chosen to speak. Why was he chosen to speak by Fiona Bruce anyway? But he was. And I thought this was bizarre. Watch this.
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court to protect their rights. Even for weekend checks and the government power, risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland and damage our security cooperation.
Yeah, so he's reading from his phone there. I didn't notice that, but he's reading from his phone. Richard Tice said he thought he had an earpiece in as well. The question is, somebody put that guy there. He's reading from a script. Who put him there and who gave him that script? You know, all due respect to him, but I just got this feeling that he doesn't lose too much sleep about Northern Ireland. And yet suddenly there he is saying, it would be bad for Northern Ireland, all this, you know. I mean, who put him there? What was that about? Really bizarre. Why did Fiona Bruce choose him to speak? What's going on, do you think?
Well, I think the BBC Question Time is just a campaign programme, isn't it? And they frequently have audience members, so-called audience members, that turn out to be sort of local councillors who are now sort of...
Labour councillors, you mean? It's always local Labour councillors, yeah.
Always spot the sort of political activist who's to be a nurse. And so, we have to try and understand how the BBC is doing this. And I think they must be going around to sort of local charities or something. You know, this is just my supposition, but the local sort of charities that help people who've come here illegally or whatever, looking for representatives. They're searching for an opinion, and that's what we say about the BBC, about sort of being a campaigning organisation. They are looking for a particular narrative and finding ways to deliver that, which is, of course, why she asked him. As you say, why ask him? Well, she asked him because he was planted there to, you know, supposedly come up with this amazing viewpoint from someone who'd arrived here illegally and just really didn't deliver. I mean, I don't know if he was those questions or if he'd actually just, you know, if ChatGPT had given them to him. It was very...
Well, I felt a bit sorry for him because he's obviously been told, look, get all this in. So he's a bit nervous about it. I mean, I'm not having a go at him because his English wasn't that great, but it wasn't that great. He wasn't reading it that well. You know, this is a fact of life. And I felt that whoever put him there put him in a difficult position because he just looked like an idiot, didn't he? Northern Ireland, you know. And in the end, Fiona Bruce had to step in and shut him up because it was getting too obviously scripted and embarrassing. But what are the BBC, what are they doing that for? Why don't they just have, you know, members of the local community, people who live there, voicing their concerns and their opinions? Why have they got to filter in, you know, small boat migrants to tell us why we've got to stay in the ECHR rather laboriously?
Exactly. Well, this is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be just a local audience, but it's never that. And they need to just get rid of Question Time because it is always these planted figures who've obviously been sort of, you know, organised by some local charity or something like that, or some trade union, and they go on there to sort of be the representative of the man of the people, and actually they are completely a plant. And this guy has just made that so apparent with his... Yeah. You know, he, as you say, he doesn't care about Northern Ireland. I really can't imagine that he cares anything about Northern Ireland. And it just makes a joke of the whole programme. And in fact, it's just an insult. I mean, I think that's probably why people watch Question Time anyway, just to see how bad it's got, you know.
Oh, yeah. By the way, Rebecca, there was the other migrant. I think he came from Syria, or it might have been Afghanistan as well. But he said that I seem to remember. I may be slightly wrong here, but he in his journey from the Middle to Far East, all the way across the European continent to Britain eventually, that he'd applied to 11 countries. for asylum and been turned down by every single one. But had clearly been told, well, if you keep going, get to Calais, get on one of those boats. Don't worry, but Britain will let you stay, which of course we did. It's ridiculous, you know. But you know, here he is telling I was turned down by 11 countries, and then Britain accepted me. And of course, the audience. You know, that's what happens every single time on Question Time, isn't it? That somebody says something, shall we say, right-wingish, like it's about time we closed our borders and stopped these migrants coming across the channel illegally. That kind of statement will be met with kind of stony, frosty silence. But if somebody says, like Zach Kralansky or Daisy Cooper, what a panel that was, you know, open up all the borders and let millions of people in every day. Yeah! You know, the audience sort of hats in the air, champagne corks popping. And Fiona Bruce gets very shirty when anybody suggests. Zia Youssef, last time he was on, said, well, you pack the audience with left-wingers, don't you? Oh, we do not. We do. We go to the ends of the earth to make sure that our audience is balanced. Well, here's what I hear. I'm not impugning the BBC's efforts to make the Question Time audience balanced. But what I hear is, shall we say, the forces of the left are very active in this area, and they succeed in getting a lot of imposters into every single Question Time audience. So they go in saying, you know, I'm a local shopkeeper, or you know, I work on the docks or whatever. But in fact, they're Labour activists, or they're left-wing activists. That's what happens. So I think that it may be the case that the BBC tries hard to keep their audiences balanced, but when you see the programme, they are absolutely, palpably, clearly not balanced. They are wildly biased towards the left, and I think I'm explaining why I think that is the case, that the forces of the left manage to infiltrate these audiences week in, week out.
Absolutely, and it should be just it's meant to be. The whole premise of the programme is it's the local people to discuss a topic that might be relevant to them or not. It's just, you know, and it has been taken over as a sort of party political tool for the left. As you say, it could be. It's a like a political rally when, you know, certain things are said and they're all cheering. It's organised how you would organise leadership contest for, you know, someone to overtake from Keir Starmer. It's just so blatantly organised. And I think the thing is, well, if the BBC is trying to make it sort of balanced, they're not trying hard enough. They're really not. They need to do better, because they are. If they are completely naive to this, then they have to do better, because they're completely infiltrated.
Yeah, there's something going on with these audiences. As I say, it's almost comedic. It's funny when you see anyone says anything like, well, I don't think we should give quite so much money to the welfare system. Stony silence, you know, that absolute stony silence. Somebody said, we need to give more billions to benefits claim. Yes! Yes! Every single time. It's just ridiculous. It's, as I say, there's not much comedy on the BBC anymore. In fact, I go so far as to say there is no comedy at all on the BBC. But Question Time never fails to deliver if you're looking for a good laugh. Do you share my horror and shock that the government has decided this is okay to take 226 children and experiment on them?
Yes, I think none of us thought that this could possibly get ethical approval, because what you've described is so shocking. And the other reason is that this experiment has already been done in the UK. Something like 2,000 children went through the GIDS clinic, the Gender Identity Clinic at the Tavistock in London, after the time when they started using these drugs. And so they already have a population of 2,000 damaged young people out there, and no one has followed them up. And so the CAS review said they should be followed up first, and that hasn't happened. So this notion of redoing a trial, recruiting new children and starting all over again, just seems really irresponsible.
And what we do know already from what you were just describing, the 2,000 kids have already been through this. There's at least one is busy suing the NHS for what they did to, it's Kirsten Bell, isn't it? So what they did to them. And I think there may be other legal cases in the pipeline as well. But so we know from these 2,000 kids that what we do know is these drugs are extremely strong and they are life-changing. Once you take these drugs, you will never be the same again.
Yes.
And yet, this experiment is supposed to be to find out what happens to kids when you give them puberty blockers. Well, as you said, we know that anyway. That was deemed by West Streeting in December to have been a mistake. And now he's letting 226 more kids be subjected to these drugs that will change them for the rest of their lives. That the state is sponsoring this and is saying, yes, this is fine. It's like something out of either a third world country or some kind of weird tyrannical country, you know, North Korea or something. But this is just, I'm absolutely astonished that any sentient adult in a Western democracy can decide that this is a good thing to do or should even be remotely considered. Don't you feel the same?
Well, I do, and people will be wondering, listening to that, well, why on earth is it happening, especially when it's already been done? The arguments we're being told are that all those children who went through it before went on to cross-sex hormones, and so we can't study them just to study puberty blockers on their own. But that doesn't make any sense, because the whole point of puberty blockers is so that they won't go through puberty, so that they can then have treatment and make them look like the other sex. So the whole cross-sex hormones thing is kind of a given. And then the other reason is that activists have basically told parents and children that they need to transition. They've been terrified into believing that, you know, that they do have this condition where they're somehow a boy brain in a girl body or the other way around, and that they need to do this, and that if they don't do it, they'll suffer mental anguish. And the real tragedy of that is if they really cared about these children, they wouldn't be telling them that. They'd be telling them the truth, which is before puberty blockers, most of those children grew out of it and puberty was the cure, and most of them grew up to be gay. So what they're actually doing is taking little gender non-conforming children and they're actually putting them through treatment that will destroy their health and their sex lives in the future, when if they just nurtured them and left them alone, they would be fine.
So what is it, absolutely, what is interesting about this is, you know, I'm a bit of an animal lover, so I'm not at all keen on vivisection. But I think I have stronger feelings on vivisection on human beings. That's what this is. This is vivisection for kids. This is using children in the way, I don't like the fact we use animals to experiment on for drugs, but this is saying, well, on this test we won't bother with animals, we'll use human beings. Worse than that, we'll use little kids from the age of 8 until 13. It's vivisection on people, isn't it?
Well, and the children can't possibly understand what they're giving up. Those little children can't understand what it means to give up the chance to be a parent, and they certainly can't understand sex. But they're losing all of that, and they're going to suffer other health consequences as well. So you know, you have to wonder why parents would give consent for this. But the reason is that some parents really they believe in trans, they really want this, it's exciting to them. Others are just really worried about what will happen to their child if they don't go through this. And as I say, that's because they've been told really a myth about this. And historically, when we didn't have puberty blockers, the majority of children just grew out of it. And so it is a bit of a tragedy that these people have been terrified into thinking that they must do this to their children. And many of them may come to regret it, and that must be a terrible thing to have to live with.
Educate us a little bit, Fiona. What do puberty drug blockers do to kids? What do we know happens to kids who take them?
Yeah, they suspend them in a sort of prepubescent state. So they stop the growth of secondary sex organs, so the girls don't get breasts, the boys little penises stay tiny like a little boy child's, and you know, a boy's voice doesn't deepen, for example. And so the idea of these, where this treatment came from in the Netherlands, the idea was that when they then go on to cross-sex hormones and get surgery, they will more easily pass as the other sex. And that's certainly true, particularly for the boys. It's less of a thing for girls, because if girls take testosterone, they'll start to look like small men anyway. But the other side effects are not that well known. There's definite evidence that their bone density suffers, because when you go through puberty, lots of things happen. You don't just mature sexually, you also mature in your brain, your bones gain a lot of density. You know, there are lots of changes. Your emotional and psychological function changes. So they don't fully know all the other developmental stages that get frozen when they stop puberty. But what they do know is it's not a good thing. It's not a natural process. And we already have, as you mentioned, cases of young people, and in other countries too, deeply regretting what they were told about puberty blockers and what happened to them, and having to live with terrible medical consequences now.
So it seems to me that among the many other effects, principally these kids will never enjoy a normal sex life, and nor will they enjoy the joys of parenting.
Yes, I mean, those are two things. If they go on to cross-sex hormones, and they nearly all did in all the previous studies. In the UK, there was one study, and in Netherlands and in other countries, other groups have been studied. They nearly all went on to cross-sex hormones, and you're exactly right. They lose fertility and they lose sexual function. There's growing evidence that the cross-sex hormones then cause all kinds of other problems too, cancers, for example. And we know from when women were doped behind the Iron Curtain for sport reasons, when they were put on testosterone, they had terrible health problems. Well, this is similar. So we're doing these very extreme treatments, and this study is testing the most extreme treatment you could do, when we know historically that there are much more benign supportive treatments that are not so invasive. For example, talking therapy, counseling, and then puberty itself, which actually would help most of these children just resolve. They would be happy, they would realize they are the sex they were born. As I say, many of them would be same-sex attracted. No need for this terrible medical treatment.
And Kemi Badenoch's joining quite a substantial number of Labour MPs in pressing the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to overrule West Streeting and call this off. I assume Sex Matters officially is calling on the Prime Minister to call this experiment off as well?
Many people, many clinicians, many campaign groups are saying this cannot be the right place to start if you're trying to work out how to help these children. What about all the other recommendations that were in the Cass review that haven't been done? And the Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, is saying, well, I'm just following the Cass review. But this is such a shocking intervention. One would have thought this was the last thing, the absolute last resort, not a place to start.
Yeah, we can't experiment on children, Fiona. It's as simple as that. It's just an absolutely shocking proposal. Found some Muslim pupils, little boys, I mean, it's a primary school, washing their feet in the boys' loos, in the boys' lavatories. He told them that Britain is still a Christian country, but if they want to attend an Islamic school, there is one just down the road. This, I mean, you might argue that perhaps wasn't the most diplomatic way to deal with this situation, but I think he walked into the boys' loos, saw this kind of Muslim ritual going on, and just thought it didn't seem quite right. And I kind of agree. You know, what about
I wouldn't elevate it, Kev. This is just a bunch of young boys.
Yeah, okay,
washing their feet in the sink, probably causing a mess.
Yeah, but let's finish the story. You know, for this, one of these kids, little sneak, complained. One of these Muslim kids complained. The teacher was reprimanded, suspended, and then sacked. He was also reported to the local safeguarding board, who decided that he had made hurtful comments about Islam and had therefore subjected the telltale kid to emotional harm, and as such is now banned from working with children. So he's had his career and his life ruined for that little interlude where he said, "Look, don't wash your feet in here. If you want to go to a Muslim school, there's one down the road." That possibly was not the best way of dealing with that situation. But his whole life ruined, banned from working with children for that. The Free Speech Union, Toby Young, has taken up the case. And as Toby said, this guy has had his career and life ruined for telling his pupils something that is uncontestedly true. It is uncontestably true. This is the official state religion of Britain is the Church of England. It's as simple as that. So this is officially a Christian country. So he told the kids something that's true, and for that he's had his life ruined. What is going on?
Well, our elites are not there on merit anymore, so they feel very insecure. So they go along with these cult beliefs. I mean, how ridiculous is this? I mean, what if he'd walked in and the young boys were practicing halal slaughter of a goat? Would it have been rude to tell them to stop doing that in the lavatories? I mean, on a simple basis, I don't believe that primary-age children should be washing their feet in hand sinks. I mean, of course, if you want to have a religious provision and a religious school that does provide for the ablution that Islam often requires, that's fine. But that's like, you know, in the swimming pool where I can wash my feet before I go in the main swimming baths. Not hand sinks. On a simple basis, I don't trust a word of the evidence that they will have listened to, because it will have come from energetic young primary-age, school-age children. And whilst I like and would die to protect primary-age, school-age children, I don't necessarily see them as a trustworthy source of information. This professional, it's right that Toby protects him. We have gone hysterically insane on all of this. And, you know, honestly, I'm very lucky where I live, because we have generation after generation of integrated Muslims here. And so one of my Muslim mates, again, just turned to me one day. We happened to be at an event going to the local church, and he just said to me, "You know, the maddest thing you've ever done is give up your Christianity. Why have you all done it?" It's like, it's coming from my Muslim mate. Why have we given up our Christianity? Why have we thrown it all away? It protected us from monsters, and we need it back. And that doesn't mean that we have some hypothetical conflict with Islam. We might have a conflict with young boys washing their feet in hand sinks and telling them off, because that's rapscallion behaviour, in my view, regardless of motivation.
Rapscallion, rapscallion.
It's just wrong. It's just,
that is the first time on any of my shows anybody's used that word, so congratulations. What are you going to say next? Scallywag or ne'er-do-well or something? But no, seriously. I mean, the point about this is, you know, there may have been better ways of dealing with this, but this is just ridiculous. And what you're saying about Christianity, it does feed into this increasing suspicion that we are subjugating our state religion, Christianity, the Church of England, to any other religion you want to mention, particularly Islam. You know, this guy was found guilty of making hurtful comments about Islam. Well, I mean, why? I don't think.
Why is that a crime? Why is that a crime?
First of all, you know, hurtful comments aren't a crime. And secondly, it seems as if all he said was, listen, you know, this is obviously some kind of Islamic ritual. If you want to go to a Muslim school, there is one down the road. You know, he's obviously being a bit sarcastic, facetious. I'm not sure if that is really constitutes a hurtful comment about Islam, but because he's deemed to have been hurtful about Islam, that by extension was hurtful to this little sneak of a kid who told tales on him. And therefore, this guy is not allowed to work with children anymore. He's a damn teacher.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And you think back to the teachers of our youth. I mean, I'm just old enough to have got one who fought, or who did national service. He didn't fight in the war, but he was old enough to have done national service. And you know, the way that he behaved versus all of this, I really do think that this is because of the replacement religion for Christianity, which is wokeism, which is adherence to the cult. I have to say, I generally don't believe that these woke people actually respect Islam in any way. I think they're just terrified about appearing racist, and that's their main motivation. Literally 99
It is this
times
terror,
100.
isn't it? It's this preemptive terror of being accused of Islamophobia or racism, and this is what the authorities have decided about this poor teacher. It just
but that is intellectually lacking any credibility at all. And what really gets me, Kat, is that my sensible Muslim mates would go, no, kids should not be washing their feet in the hand sinks. And if they said it because they're Muslim, that would be okay. And they'd be listened to then. But if I say it, you know, I'm at risk of... This is a ridiculous system. Obviously, young boys should not be washing their feet in hand sinks. It's just obvious. And we've become institutionally stupid by a lack of merit and by turning our back on Christianity and instead having this replacement religion that doesn't make any sense at all.
The Taliban, killjoy tossers that they are, have arrested 4 young men for wearing outfits inspired by the Peaky Blinders. They were detained in Herat, the Afghanistan area, by the Taliban morality enforcers. I hate. Look at these guys. Look at these guys. This is in the middle of some fly-blown town outpost. Look, I cannot believe it. And of course, they've been charged with bolstering foreign cultures. They're known as the Jebrail Shelbies, and no doubt their lives will be hell. A little bit of character, a little bit of personality in Afghanistan. Yeah, can't have that. Another reason to despise those tossers from the Taliban. Let's talk to journalist Nuraya Khan. Welcome to the show, Nuraya. I know that you lived in Dubai, you've lived under Sharia law, so you know a little bit about, shall we say, strict Muslim Islamic culture. But did you share my astonishment when you saw these guys, these Afghanistan guys, dressed as the Peaky Blinders in the middle of a town in Afghanistan? Astonishing.
It was absolutely astonishing when I saw it as well, and I thought they had done a very good job replicating. I mean, they must have got, you know, the tailor-fitted suits and all that, but they've done an extraordinary job replicating the Thomas Shelby look, really. But it's just a shame that, again, in a country like Afghanistan, you try to show a little bit of individuality or a little bit of, you know, expression of any kind, and it's just shut down immediately. The way that they were forced to obviously apologize and grovel. I mean, look, they're like, you know, I think they were the talk of the town up until they got arrested.
Exactly right. And what do you make of this? They've been, apart from breaking some kind of morality code, they've been imprisoned, forced to apologize. Their main crime seems to be, and I quote, promoting foreign culture. Ooh, what a crime! Yeah. I suppose we're not surprised that the Taliban are so killjoyish and so awful. But how do you think that these guys knew about the Peaky Blinders? Is there a sort of black market in foreign films and that kind, and television and that kind of thing, do you think, in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's very, you know, risky to be kind of watching Western films. Everything that is not following the strict edict of Islam is considered influenced by the infidel West and is kind of, you know, copying Western traits. Anything, you know, from Hollywood, anything American, anything foreign, essentially. But people do, especially youngsters like these they have access to things like VPN. There's a lot of black market for pirated kind of TV shows, and now with the streaming services and, you know, various links, affiliate links you can get to watch kind of all these shows. But it just shows you how far-reaching a very, you know, British show like the Peaky Blinders has such far-reaching implications that people in Afghanistan are probably watching it dubbed in Farsi. Yeah,
I think they look really, really cool, particularly in the unusual, unlikely setting that we see them. But do you know, you got some knowledge of this kind of thing. The Taliban, do they realise how unintentionally comical they are? So these people were arrested on the orders of the, wait for it, the Taliban's Ministry for the Propagation of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. And the spokesperson for that joke ministry, he's called Saif al-Islam Khyber, said that the behaviour was inconsistent with Islamic values and Afghan culture. As I say, they don't realise they are accidentally, inadvertently comical. It's like something out of the Middle Ages. What a joke.
I know, it's like you're in a waking nightmare, and especially for the Afghans living under it, but it is like a Monty Python sketch gone wrong, honestly.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. And I you know, let's pay homage to those 4 guys. They must have known that this was damn dangerous. And the footage we're watching, that's not the only time they've been out and about. Can you imagine what the other locals must have seen, thought as they walked down the street? But they knew they were almost taking their life in their hands by challenging the Taliban's strict, tedious, boring, medieval, outmoded code of behaviour, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like I was saying, they must have been the talk of the town and photographed, and that was, you know, what people were whispering. But it was probably a ticking time bomb, as we've seen. Like, it's a matter of time before, you know, they've created that kind of environment where it is like something out of The Handmaid's Tale or something, where you've got morality police to such a degree where your neighbors will, you know, rat on you if they have to, just before something happens to them for not doing so. And this Ministry of Vice and Virtue, they've kind of put into the system by removing the Ministry of Women entirely. And now you've got this propagation of vice and virtue, and they actually go around a lot of men. You always think when it comes to theological regimes like this that women and children are seriously the only casualty, but I think it's more than half of the arrests made more recently are for men obviously not being compliant with their beard that has to be following the strict Taliban code of like one fist kind of from their chin onwards, and stopping when it's prayer time and attending religious gatherings, and even things like the youngsters there listening to music. So yes, for sure it would have been known that, you know, they'll have fun while they parade around, only until they get caught up in the reality.
They knew they were cruising for a bruising. Yeah, exactly right. Now, you know, well, you got these brave 4 young men challenging this awful administration, this awful Taliban killjoy government. Just before you go, I mean, women, of course, you know, they're not allowed to, as you just said, by the way, guys in Afghanistan get arrested if the Taliban decide that their beard or their hairstyle is even remotely Western. So you've got to have the right kind of beard. That's how strict they are. What about women? So women, of course, have to be kind of completely covered, but there's a new kind of burqa in town, isn't there? Now, of course, men who have driven into wild sexual frenzy if they even see a little scintilla of female flesh over there in Afghanistan. Well, they've turned out now that 2 eyes, that's too much. So there is now a new burqa with 1 eye for women. That is disgusting. That is the imprisonment of a human being, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I was so shocked when I heard this as well, that how much more can you erase women from society, and they managed to take it that much further. So under the strictest extreme interpretation of certain Quranic exegesis, if you look at it, there are times when the Prophet and his companions have said a woman only needs to see the very narrow path or the road ahead of her, and that's what the Taliban have deemed is the only thing that, you know, is non-offensive or non-tempting for a man, because everything else is considered aura, which is, you know, very temptuous and sexual. So a woman's voice cannot be heard in public unless it's extremely necessary. And it's kind of like they exist between this human and animal form as, like, you know, the chattel of the Taliban, or the male guardians, essentially. It's awful.
Well, I probably shouldn't say that, but for what they do to women and what they did to those great guys, the Peaky Blinders, to hell with the Taliban. Isabel Oakeshott, who of course did the interview and indeed was part of this process all the way through. Well, Isabel, let's ask you first. I mean, my takeaway from this, the headline for me is this, that this is what we've just been witnessing. I think Christian at one point estimated that he thinks there may be 4,000, maybe more people waiting in the jungle there for their turn to come across the channel. So we have this vast waiting room, this huge terminus, if you like, of people who've come from all corners of the earth, across from the Middle East, from Central Africa, etc. They've arrived in Calais, and then what we've assumed is, in a kind of chaotic way, they just sort of hang out, pitch a tent and wait for their turn. But it's much, much more organised than that, and much more hierarchical, and it looks as if right at the centre, that very, very nice bit of the camp where there's a generator and wheelie bins and a loo outside the camp, that's where the bosses are. So it's far more sophisticated, far more hierarchical than we'd ever imagined. Your thoughts?
Well, that's exactly right. And I did hear you earlier describing it as a kind of like the kind of airport terminal where they're all gathering and waiting to take off to Britain. And I think that's a very good way of putting it, except that it's an extremely dangerous and lawless airport terminal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it is curious, isn't it, that if an undercover if a builder from Rochdale can go into this place and in the course of a few days work out where the kind of, you know, those at the top of the tree, where the kind of mafioso are, if you like, the people that are running this place. He's worked out where they are. So why is it then that the French police can't root those people out? You know, the whole camp disintegrates without the brutal, intimidating, terrifying people who run it. And I use those words not lightly, because every night in the camps of Dunkirk, gunfire rings out. That is semi-automatic weapons being fired. This is very, very serious stuff. And as Christian revealed, the French police are more than complicit. They are enabling this trade. And it is effectively right on our shores, on our doorstep. Yeah, that's exactly right as well. That's the other headline, isn't it, Robert? That there's the police, if you like. They're like the ushers. They're helping these people onto buses. They're helping them to the jungle. They're almost escorting them onto the beaches and then waving them goodbye as they climb onto those dinghies. So we kind of had this picture emerging before, but Christian's investigation has revealed the extent of the police complicity in this extraordinary operation.
It does sound like they have almost given up trying to govern these areas, and they have effectively ceded control of their own territory to these people smugglers. You know, the idea that they've been able to sort of generators light, effectively create a Butlins type camp for themselves in northern France, just shows that the French authorities have been so sort of steered off actually trying to address this issue. And actually I think that's a problem going forward, because if these people smugglers have been able to get such a foothold in very significant strategic parts of northern France, then that is something that is only going to benefit them going forward. And I think what this really does show actually is, you're absolutely right, that the French police are clearly complicit in this by their sort of cowardice and reluctance to actually do anything. But I think it shows, more importantly, that this idea that the solution to the small boats crossing lies in any way with negotiating with the French and hoping the French will do something is absolutely for the birds, because the fact that they've allowed such a situation to unfurl on their own shoreline is really indicative of them not having the operational or political nous to actually want to tackle this, and they're very happy effectively for these huge camps to just proliferate on their own territory. And I think that's really important going forward, that we recognise we can throw as much money as we want. I think it's about $500 million we throw at the French. $500 million, if not more. Yeah, exactly. And you know, the big plans that the French are going to stop boats that are in waters, they don't mention that the boats will have to be empty. They can't stop a boat if there's people in there. But I think this just shows this idea that the solution to this lies in us being a lot more firm and sending very clear messages to these individuals that if they do manage to get into Britain, they're not going to be able to claim asylum. They're going to be detained and deported. And frankly, actually, when you hear some of the behaviours and attitudes of individuals in these camps, you kind of think, what chance is there of them, if granted asylum, ever integrating into British society? We have people there, it sounds like, glorifying and laughing at footage of people being shot. We have people just sort of nonchalantly smoking very hard drugs, and, you know, the sound of gunfire most evenings as well. I don't see any way that these individuals could possibly be integrated into British society. And I think that really pops the myth that a lot of people on the left, especially recently from the Green Party, have been trying to peddle about these individuals, that they're somehow victims. They are clearly, in large part, very, very shady characters with very dangerous attitudes in some part. Yeah, and I think, Isabel, you know, clearly most of the migrants in this camp and around the beaches, they want to get on a boat. But it's what emerges from Christian's film is there's this caucus of hardcore operational managers, if you like, who are clearly kind of migrants, foreigners, possibly from the Taliban, as he was suggesting, who have no intention of getting on boats. They're running the operation. They're, you know, organising these stalls. They're, you know, clearly
almost policing the entire area, because Christian at one point, was told you better get the hell out of there. So they're checking on who's there. They're no doubt controlling who's leaving. So there are people there for whom this has become almost their permanent residence, and they are in charge.
Without a doubt. And I think some of the people at the very top naturally don't live in the camp. Christian came face to face with someone who was clearly in a very influential position, holding the dog wasn't even on a lead. And that is no place for a dog to hang out. He felt it was very clear that people smuggler almost certainly lived well outside the camp, somewhere much more comfortable. What surprised me is that this idea that we've all had, that that many of the young men in these camps, and it is largely young men, are the most enterprising opportunists from their countries of origin. They've got such spirit. They're creative. They manage to get themselves all the way from sub-Saharan Africa to the French coastline and then over to Britain. So they must have some qualities to offer us. That's a very brave and adventurous thing to do. I don't think it's like that at all. This is highly organised right from the countries of origin. Many of the people that Christian built relationships with are very poorly educated. There's no way they could have navigated their way from Eritrea or South Sudan. They are being led here by what they call travel agents, and you cannot just rock up in that camp of Dunkirk and expect to get on a boat. You need a handler, and I think that only a proportion of people getting on those boats are actually paying in any conventional way. This is much more complex than we have been led to believe.
And also, Isabel, in terms of the guns, what do you think is going on there? And the other thing I wanted to ask you, you've spent some more time with Christian than I have, obviously. When he was talking about all the walking and the buses you have to catch, the public transport, I couldn't quite get my head around the geography of the area. Why is that? I mean, is the jungle like a very long way away from the beach or something?
It is, yeah. So that's another surprise. I mean, of course, there are multiple departure points for dinghies along the northern French coast, which is what supposedly makes it so difficult to stop them. Now, I'm not buying into that, because there's plenty of drones and other technology we can use. But yes, so the main migrant camp in Dunkirk is about 40 or 50 kilometres from where some of the boat departures, some of the most popular boat departure places are. So the migrants have to get on multiple modes of public transport to actually reach the departure points. And again, this is where the French state comes in. Most of that transport is provided for free. There are free buses plying these routes, and the migrants just pile onto them. So, one way we could stop this would be to start refusing them travel. It's an obvious way. They probably would, in fairness, walk 50 kilometres, but it would make it a lot more difficult, and a lot more people would fall by the wayside. And again, on the trains, well, they're supposed to buy tickets, but we didn't observe any ticket inspectors bothering with migrants that hadn't paid. So again, here we see the French state enabling this appalling trade in people and this appalling criminality.
And let me ask you, Robert, and we'll go back to Isabel about this as well in just a second, but I was also struck by Christian relaying how important British charities were to this entire operation, that if it wasn't for Care for Calais and all that lot going around handing out free foods, and most importantly, charging facilities for their mobile phones, the whole operation would collapse. Now, perhaps, if we could persuade Care for Calais to not charge these people's phones, the operation might not be so slick, and maybe not quite so many people might keep pouring across the channel to Britain.
It's unbelievable that Care for Calais is still able to operate in the way that it is, because effectively the pastoral support, the support like charging mobile phones, allows these individuals to bide their time and to wait until the right moment for that crossing. And of course, at the moment, we're seeing really turbulent weather and very few people coming across the boat. I very much doubt, and I think this footage has really vindicated this point of view, the fact that that won't have an impact on those individuals waiting on the other side of the channel. If they have round-the-clock sort of food provision and the necessary charging facilities provided for them, then there is no sort of having to that they can count down the clock. They can count down until there's an appropriate day for them to make that crossing. There's no sort of time impetus on them to try and make it across. And I think effectively what the British charities seem to be doing is allowing for these settlements to become more and more permanent. And going back to the mobile phone point as well, of course, actually what you then allow them to do as well is to stay in contact with a long chain of other individuals that perhaps on this route. I think a really key point here as well, actually, is the fact that, and Isabel pointed this out, that these individuals probably in large part haven't been able to afford a lot of the passage and probably aren't paying some of the huge sums that you do hear being touted. And actually probably what is happening is they are so in hock with the gangs and the people smugglers that there is work lined up for them on the other side in Britain. There's a huge burgeoning black economy that it's planned to slip them into. And this is why we're seeing, for instance, today a report saying that the Home Office has lost track of so many asylum seekers because a lot of them are coming here already with opportunities lined up for them. When we say they're coming to work, we're not meaning that they're just coming to work and delivery. We're meaning that they're probably coming to work in sometimes very illicit and illegal trades, drugs and contraband weapons and so forth as well. So I think that's a really important revelation that Christian's been able to bring to the fore with this.
Yeah, that's another point, Isabel. As Christian was saying, these guys, mostly guys, young guys, you know, they are obviously not doctors and engineers and surgeons like so many Labour and Green MPs seem to believe, and the Lib Dems. They're not doctors, surgeons, engineers. You know, they're blue collar guys. They're from, you know, sort of the lower echelons of their various societies that they come from. So they arrive. Yeah, I find it hard to believe. We hear, I don't know what the current ticket that they're talking about, what the fare is at the moment, but I've heard down the years, at one point it was supposed to be 5,000 euros, down to 3,000, and then I heard about like bargain basement offers of 1,500 euros. I find it hard to believe that these guys like Christian's mates from Senegal, I find it hard to believe that they've got 1,500 or 2,000 euros in their pocket waiting to pay for their crossings. So what is going on here? How are they getting on these boats? What is the reason, do you think?
Well, let me be categorical about that. They don't have that money. They don't. Some of the people that Christian interacted with didn't even have €2.
Exactly.
You know, people have nothing. And that is why the role of the charities is so important. You know, this point that you made about the mobile phones, yes, you know, often they're communicating solely with the people smugglers by WhatsApp. You know, these are not obvious links. It's not as if there's a bunch of people going around the camps with little badges on saying, I'm a people smuggler, I'm here to help you. This is all done remotely and it's utterly dependent on mobile phones. And here's the other thing. What was so, I guess, very striking from this operation was the extent to which demand for places on boats, demand for channel crossings massively outstrips the supply of boats making that journey. There are far more people wanting to come across the channel and waiting to come across the channel than the people smugglers at this stage are able to cater to. So what that means is that those guys, mostly guys, that turn up, you know, they've come all this way with the help of handlers. They are then stuck in the camps for months, sometimes even years, waiting to build up enough credit with the people smugglers to allow them a place on a boat. And God knows what they're getting up to on the other side. So they're providing services to the people smugglers, either in France or in the UK, in payment for their passage. And by the way, do you remember not so long ago, we'll all remember it, the one in, one out, one in again guy, that guy, you know what he said when he came back in again? He said, I can't be in northern France because I'm a modern day slave. And we all laughed. You know what? I reckon he was telling the truth, because that is what these people are in northern France. They are, many of them, slaves to the people smugglers.
So in other words, the paymasters for these voyages on these small boats across the channel are mysterious, and it is not, it seems, mostly the passengers themselves that are paying for their passage.
Yeah, exactly that. Now, I think that changes the whole way we look at this. I'm not saying that there aren't some people who do pay, and you're absolutely right about the varying sums, and we know this because Christians spent a long period interacting with people smugglers or their agents on WhatsApp in different forums, trying to get information about how he could make a crossing, because ultimately, actually, that's what he wanted to do. And he was quoted all sorts of different prices. Because, of course, like any negotiation, they start off by saying, well, you know, it's going to cost you $3,000. And by the way, the idea that people aren't still coming over in the backs of lorries and all manner of other ways, that is still very much going on, but that is more expensive because it's described as 100% safe game. That's the terminology they use. So coming over on a boat is regarded as the most risky, but it's really living in those camps that's the most risky, and especially for any outsider that doesn't have a handler.
It's fascinating stuff. We're going to break in a second, but before we do, Robert, what are you making of this apparent truth that most of these migrants are not paying for themselves? What does that mean? Because, you know, don't forget, we're going to end up with, what is it, 50, 60,000 that are coming across this year. You know, there's already been about 60, 70, hasn't there, since Keir Starmer got into power. And if we take on board that they haven't, most of them haven't paid for their own tickets, I mean, what is going on here, do you think?
I think it reveals what the small boats crisis is actually all about, and it's not sort of individuals that are fleeing their country of origin, seeking asylum and grabbing every penny they can from their savings to try and get to Britain. It shows that this is very organised, and actually, because we have such poor data from the Home Office, what we are likely seeing in this country, although there's no way for the Home Office to actually relay this to people, is an exploding black economy of, as I said, illegal working, involvement in drugs. We know, for instance, that individuals are now coming with heroin, having swallowed heroin into the UK. And I think that really actually, and this documentary has really shown actually just how widespread that relationship individuals have with people smugglers. They're not all sort of vulnerable asylum seekers throwing themselves at anyone that just happens to be able to offer them a route to Britain. A lot of them have got caught up and at certain points in the journey, whether that's in the country of origin or as they've come through Europe with these individuals, and they have been promised access to Britain in return for engaging in illegal working. We have tens of thousands of individuals that have likely slipped the Home Office, and we just don't know what they're up to. And I think actually this documentary probably does show that a large part of that is individuals just slipping off to go and almost pay their debt to the people smugglers that have brought them to Britain.
Yeah, in other words, what's happening here, we've always assumed we're being flooded with okay, chancers, most of them chancing their arm, economic migrants, get me across the channel and, you know, they'll start giving me benefits and put me in a nice hotel. They're chancers, they're lone chancers. But what we're learning here is the possibility that we're not being flooded with economic migrants, we're being flooded with kind of pawns in a major organisational crime game, that this is organised crime, and that these people coming across the channel may be a lot more than just chancers who are hoping to make a few quid while they're in Britain. They're working for other people. This could be very, very serious. Let's listen to Mr. Daniel Elkerles. Now, he's the chief executive of something called NHS Providers. Not to be confused with the NHS. It's sort of part of this thing called the NHS Federation. I can never quite work out what they do. They sort of work with providers who supply the NHS. They're supposed to coordinate the various businesses that aid the NHS. They're basically rah cheerleaders for our national health system.
Like an arm's length organisation.
Sort of left wing, isn't the NHS great? No, it's crap. Anyway, Daniel Elkerles, the chief executive of this non-NHS organisation, who isn't a doctor and isn't medically qualified, used to be chief executive of St Helier Hospital, massive hospital in South London. You know, so he's a sort of health. Professional health executive, middle manager type. He went on to Times Radio the other day and he said this.
When you were talking about it being like COVID, I think we need to get back into the habit that if you are coughing and sneezing, but you're not unwell enough to not go to work, then you must wear a mask when you're in public spaces, including on public transport, to stop the chances of you giving your virus to somebody else.
How do you know? You're not a doctor. You know, what is going on here? What with this guy who's not a doctor telling them you must wear a mask? No. How about that? No, I won't. Also, you know, so these face nappies, I mean, whether or not they work is an interesting question. A significant number of experts say that they don't, that they do not stop the spread of viruses. And the University of East Anglia conducted this huge study after COVID, and they concluded that donning face masks did not lower the risk of COVID infections. So there's a strong argument to say face masks don't work. So I think that face masks have become a weird symbol of, you know, left-wing compliance, compliance with the government. Wear a mask. You know, during the COVID, when you were, you know, got arrested if you didn't wear a mask. Do you remember those times, Philip? I mean, you know, I had to come to work, and I remember, you know, there's one more thing you had to remember when you went out: your keys, your work pass, and all that. And it's like, where's my mask?
Where's your face,
you know, because you couldn't get on the tube unless you wore one. But there is the evidence that they actually work, that they're efficacious in stopping the spread of viruses, is pretty weak.
Yeah, there've been several studies actually that say that, and this is all about the NHS, the perma-crisis NHS, and saving the NHS, isn't it? And he was like straight from central casting, wasn't he? You know, it's almost as though, hey, you know, maybe we need to change the model of the NHS, which is the 1947 model for the country as it was in 1947. It's a different place now, 80 years later. But there's something about this which, as you say, Kev, and I think you're absolutely spot on, it's symbolic. It's up with the banging of the pots and pans on the Thursday night, isn't it? It's something about this we're part of this socialist utopia that doesn't work, but we're going to carry on insane style, even though it doesn't work, worshipping it. And there's something really disturbing.
It's a sign of your compliance.
Yeah, there's something really disturbing about it, because everybody knows that these masks don't work, because that's what all the sensible studies say, and yet people like him, who's supposed to be a professional, are kind of.
I mean, you know, there are experts who I mean, the narrative around face masks was and still is that if you wear one of those surgical ones, those real the ones that look like a suit of armour that they wear in hospitals, that, you know, yes, they of course they can be quite effective, but we can't go around. But if you wear those sort of just those nappies that go around, you know, a lot of experts will tell you they're just completely useless. Some will say they may have a marginal effect. Some might say that they do think that they work. But wearing a mask, you know, we don't need people like Daniel Elkerles telling us that we must do it. It's our decision, and I've looked at the evidence. My decision is I'm not wearing a mask because I don't think they work. I'm not saying definitively they don't work, because I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but the evidence that I've seen means I'm not going to make myself look like something stupid for no reason.
Well, when I used to have to wear one, I looked like, with these glasses, I looked like Claude Rains in The Invisible Man. But I was just coming over here before on the tube, and there was someone wearing one of those nappy-type masks, and there were two big folds at the side there, where air could get in and get out. So you don't need to be an expert to know that they don't work. You just need a bit of common sense. But it's this dystopian aspect of it. You know, everybody's walking around like robots wearing these masks and you know and conforming. And
we must get that, guys. We must get back to wearing masks, because people like Daniel. Well, I don't know Daniel. I'm probably doing him wrong here, but people like Daniel, I think they enjoyed those days where people, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance and Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock were ordered, wear masks, they enjoyed those days.
And the thing is, if you're catastrophizing about all of these things, you don't have to worry about the actual stuff that's going on day to day in the NHS and in the country. So they love these big things, don't they? More flu, more, oh God, we're in catastrophe, everybody's got to work together and people have to suspend their kind of judgment on other kinds of things, and let's move the narrative away. It's easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, Carl Hennigan, Dr. Carl Hennigan, Professor Carl Hennigan from Oxford University, comes on this channel quite a lot. He says that, you can wear them if you want, but you're probably wasting your time. I mean, people, laymen, non-medical experts, they well, of course it works, of course. Well, no, because viruses are very small.
They are pretty small.
They're not blocked by bits of material, because bits of material are actually a lot of woven things, with holes in them. So, it's up to you. But what do you think of these people? Aren't even doctors. So you must return to wearing a mask. Will you wear a mask? We've got this alleged super flu epidemic at the moment. Will you wear a mask? Do you think masks work? I suppose if you don't think they work, why bother wearing them? I mean, I'm not going to wear a mask for this reason. I think masks are a sign of authoritarian control. That if you wear them, you're doing what the government and what the NHS tells you. So I am not going to wear a mask because I want to send a message to those people. I'm not going to do what you tell me, because I am a sovereign individual, and it's not your job to tell me whether or not I put nappies across my face.